Hello and welcome to Face to Face, our weekly overview of the most pressing issues from the Central Eastern European perspective. I'm Anna Kalczyńska and I'm joined today by Michał Broniatowski, Editor-in-Chief, TVP World. Hello, Michał.
Hello.
Good to have you. So let me start by a quote, quite powerful. Europe is ready for a breakthrough. That's Poland Prime Minister Donald Tusk's words. He said that following the European Council in Brussels, a council, should we say, a historic one, pledging quite unprecedented defense spending increase. So some say that holidays from history are truly over. However, to be honest, with Spain, Brussels as well, Belgium, reservation as to the increase of in military spending, or Slovakia and Hungary reticence for the sanctions program towards Russia, well, we should also ask the question, is it a true awakening or perhaps rather
I'd rather
a wish?
avoid using words historic, because all these meetings are historic. This history is usually half a year long. This is how many times they meet every year, the European Council, and they decided important things, and they also made it quite open to everybody that while it was possible to somehow patch the problems in NATO, and especially the threat of American disengagement, in the European Council it was much more difficult because Europe is facing on July 9th a moment in which President Trump will say whether he wants to continue with his, realize his threat of 50% tariffs across the board for everything that is produced in Europe. And this is actually time until when Europe can provide a solution to demands by Mr. Trump, because otherwise it will have to stay on this current baseline 10%. This is something which bold faces of European leaders were saying half a year ago, then making fun of the UK treaty with the USA, in which they agreed for this 10%, and they have everything fixed. Europe wanted to be brave, and we'll see what happens on the 9th. Either Mr. Trump appears again to be taco, which means Trump always chickens out, or will he really deliver on his threat, and we'll see huge turmoil in the European economy. You know, America is a huge partner, and 50% tariffs is really devastating, especially for those most important industries in Europe, which is auto industry in Germany, chemicals, and so on. And we will remember the problems with NATO as something, as a nice tune from the past when it comes.
Exactly. So for the time being, I think Donald Trump may be quite satisfied with all the outcomes, especially in the latest NATO summit in The Hague, right? Basically, he did not pledge anything. He did not bring anything, but to maintain the status quo. And he received everything he wanted.
NATO allies from Europe plus Canada just wanted to keep him happy, which apparently worked. And keeping him happy came at the cost of pledging this 5% of GDP of each country to be spent on military, on defense. 3.5% of actual military projects and 1.5% on projects related to military. Italians want to build a bridge between Sicily and the mainland for this money, which is quite funny.
The Netherlands also have to build bridges.
Yes, so we will see how it realizes, because, you know, it's very, very easy to pledge. In 2014, the whole NATO agreed to spend 2% of GDP. But now there are still 8 countries, 8 laggards, who are not spending 2% yet. And although in last year the number of countries which are complying with this demand doubled, and now we have 24 of them which are doing what is required. Why I'm saying that is that they agreed to increase this spending to 5% by 2035 in 10 years. Mm-hmm. In 10 years there will be no President Trump. Yeah. Hopefully there will be no war with Russia. You will never see.
Let's hope. And there will be a review in 2029.
These pledges are mostly political and mostly to make President Trump happy, and happy he was when he left Europe. I think for us, sitting here in Eastern Europe, what was really important for us in Poland and rubber-stamped many things which were agreed earlier, which is decision on banning natural gas imports from Russia, 18th tranche of sanctions against Russia. However, they are not as sharp as they were planned to be. And as I said at the beginning, the main problem is how to tackle trade issues, high tariffs. Mm-hmm. And here comes Mr. Tusk, the European Donald, and he says, let's quote, "I think all of us are aware about this new method how to negotiate and how to talk about trade and other communications." So he is referring to bullishness of Mr. Trump, and he's suggesting that Europe takes
similar stance.
Exactly, because why not? If he's behaving like that, why should we treat him like he was treated in NATO the day before the European Council? He should be told bluntly what Europe wants, and let's see what happens.
Perhaps some know them better. I mean, I'm talking about the Anglo-Saxon world. So the Great Britain somehow
Britain has
refused to go hard.
The Prime Minister Starmer, he has a lot of domestic problems, and he doesn't need additional problems internationally.
Anyway, Marco Rubio called and named the NATO summit in The Hague as the Trump summit. And indeed, there is some truth in it, in sense that
of course,
all the requirements were
we are
met.
Constantly talking about it, that this guy came in and achieved what he wanted. In fact, it was the whole week was his big week, because it started with bombing nuclear installations in Iran, and this operation was very smoothly prepared. Mm-hmm. Planning was excellent, and also camouflage.
But have the objectives been reached?
We don't know, and nobody knows. American media are full of conflicting information, and even Trump is very angry with some media saying that they stopped only for a few months the nuclear program of Iran. But I think even if this attack didn't succeed in destroying the whole thing, the whole program, it at least showed the American resolve, and not only to Iran. It also showed American resolve to Russia, but mainly to China. Mm-hmm. Don't forget that we are constantly having this threat that China one day could decide to attack Taiwan, and they would do it only if they were absolutely convinced that there will be no or almost no reaction from the rest of the world. So now they see that if Americans see the requirement, even against domestic politics, because American, especially MAGA world in the US, is against this involvement. But still, Trump decided to do it. So it's a good lesson for this axis of evil.
Right.
Of evil.
Exactly. So America took action, and as you said, they proved their resolve. Quite the contrary as Russia is concerned, right? Russia is not a good ally to Iran, and they refused to stand and take any action. However, President Putin did what he could. He offered help to President Trump. And he received an answer from Donald Trump saying, no, you don't have to help me with Iran, you should help me with Russia.
Yes.
So do you think there is a different option here? Trump has already changed his philosophy towards Ukraine-Russia war?
I wouldn't build on either press conference statements by Mr. Trump or to base something on his posts on Truth Social. It looks like he speaks in favor of a person to which he most recently spoke. He was always full of praise of Mr. Putin and disgust to
and that's a bad news because he announced that he's going to be talking to
and now,
Putin
on
again.
the contrary, he last person he spoke about Ukraine was President Zelensky, and he called him nice. So it's really a big compliment.
Iran, as we said, is visibly weakened since Moscow wasn't helpful here and didn't provide any assistance. Do you think that will downgrade Moscow in its notoriety of unreliable ally?
Russia couldn't do very much apart of verbal statements. They have already proven that they are not capable of helping their Middle East allies over the last few years. Remember what happened with Syria when they didn't help the former President Assad. The only thing they could do for him is to provide him with a plane to come to Moscow. Otherwise, they didn't do anything because they cannot, because they are engaged in Ukraine. The same happened here. They only could say, well, it's outrageous, but nothing else. The other thing is that Russia, which was very heavily dependent on Iran in the early days of their invasion on Ukraine, Iran supplied Putin with this notorious drones called Shahid, with missiles and actually spare parts for them, so that Moscow could build their own munitions. And now Russian economy is changing into war economy, and they are capable of building on their own enough drones, for example, to attack Ukraine, and we can see it. The numbers of drones attacking almost every night the Ukrainian territory and civilians in this country is growing. It was several dozens in the past, and now hundreds are attacking, and luckily most of them are being shut down, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm. Should we come back to the European Council and listen to some good news from Ursula von der Leyen praising Donald Tusk for the concluding presidency of the Council of the European Union? 37 legislative files, negotiation mandates on 18 more, advanced support for the 16 and 17 sanctions package for Russia, fast track on safe regulation, moving forward with the European Defence Industry Programme. So apparently we did good, as Ursula von der Leyen said. It was a challenging 6 months, but you delivered. So do you think Poland indeed did well and improved its
I think so.
Image?
It's quite interesting. The media are almost unanimous in praising Poland's presidency. Maybe it was not that difficult after the disastrous presidency of Hungary before that. But still, you forgot about one most important achievement, which is making the whole European Union to agree on so-called Security Action for Europe. The acronym for this is SAFE. Mm-hmm. And this is $150 billion, which countries agreed to draw in new bonds issued by Brussels. So it is another case of central financing by Brussels, and then countries pledging to buy these bonds in order to create a fund, as I said, worth $150 billion, which would be spent entirely on military equipment. It's very important for Ukraine, because even if this equipment is not designed for Ukraine directly, it will be used as a replacement for the equipment which has been or is being sent to the front line.
And last but not least, Michał, Siarhei Tsikhanouski. You know, it's very truly moving, because I remember this figure always behind the bars somewhere deep in Belarus. And here he comes released following years of captivity by Lukashenko. Do you think it's a new beginning? Is Lukashenko trying to achieve something with the so-called West? Is he entering a new phase of negotiations, and may we see more of the prisoners released?
We don't know, but it's a very significant move by Mr. Lukashenko. Don't forget that before the elections, this entirely falsified elections of 2020 in Belarus, the main contender in this race was Tsikhanouski, Siarhei Tsikhanouski, who was a very popular blogger and then turned politician. And he was arrested in the spring, a few months before the election. And what happened? His wife stepped in, a teacher from provinces.
It was remarkable.
Who appeared to be a fantastic speaker with charisma and very
resilience.
By the way, she was a teacher of English, so she didn't have problem to make interviews.
Fair enough.
So the fact now that he released his
main opponent.
Well, you know, top prisoner, should be understood as a major concession to the West, especially to the United States, because it was the US which managed to convince him to do it. But he was among a total of 12 released people. Unluckily, it's only one important political prisoner, but as I said, very importantly, it is the Tsikhanouski.
Absolutely, but are we entitled to have hope for
yes.
Andrzej Poczobut's release?
This I don't know. We'll come back to Poczobut in 1 second, but what I suspect, you know, this is the first time in 5 years that the West is seriously talking to Lukashenko. He was, in the past, he was using his contacts and some negotiations with the West as a leverage in his talks with Putin. And for the last 5 years, he didn't have this leverage. Now he may have. Now he may show him, Mr. Putin, that he, you know, he has where to turn.
He's just spoken to Keith Kellogg.
Exactly. Well, who brought this deal? So, if this is the treated as the beginning of something, we may soon see some prominent releases, so to say. There are, I don't know, 1,500 or more political prisoners now in Belarus, including 12 journalists from Belsat, our colleagues from our organization, who are in prison only because they were reporting for Belsat. On top of that, Polish political prisoner in Belarus, which is Andrzej Poczobut, who also has been behind bars already almost 5 years. We know that he's in bad condition, but I think that unluckily, if Lukashenko decides to free him, it will be probably the last decision on freeing others, because he's the main asset for him now, after releasing Tsikhanouski. And because his tactics, of course, is not that he wants political prisoners, he wants keeping these people in prison in order to trade, to get something in exchange if he releases them. And there are a lot of things he would like to get, concessions he would like to get from the West in exchange for his political prisoners. So we'll see how it develops. Let's hope in a positive direction, but I'm afraid it may as well appear to be completely misleading.
Michał, thank you so much for sharing your insights here on Face to Face. Michał Broniatowski, Editor-in-Chief, TVP World. And thank you for watching Face to Face. See you next week and stay on TVP World for more news and analysis. Goodbye.